Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Easy Ag, the #1 podcast to help you farm differently. This morning, I've got 3 important things to talk to you about that will greatly impact your 2021 planting. The first one that I want to talk about is corn rootworm. Corn rootworm management is always an issue in continuous corn fields, and so we always need to be cognizant of when those critical times for managing corn rootworm are. The #1 most critical time for managing corn rootworm is at the seed. And so likely if you planted continuous corn, you will have a seed that's traded with BT in there for rootworm, 1 or 2 modes of action, refuge in a bag, all kinds of stuff like that. Sometimes that trait can fail, and sometimes its efficacy can be diminished. And some of that has to do with when the rootworm hatch occurs in conjunction with what growth stage your corn is. So generally, as the corn gets larger throughout the season, the amount of BT that's expressed in the root decreases. And as that BT decreases, then its efficacy on the corn rootworm decreases also. And so I drew up on the board here 3 corn roots. This is a healthy root that hasn't been damaged. This is one that has been chewed on some and has kind of caused some witch's broom of the end of the root, but it's still alive and growing. And this one here, if you find corn plant where those roots have been nubbed back to within a 1/4 inch of the stalk and are kind of brown and just gooey, that's likely because the feeding has been so intense that they killed that root, and that root won't grow back. So what can happen with that corn rootworm if those roots are killed and they won't grow back is that stuff will gooseneck along the ground, and it'll continue to send out more brace roots out of each additional node as it grows, trying to prop itself back up. If you have enough irrigation to keep up with that, you can likely keep that corn healthy enough to grow a full yield or nearly full yield. And you just want to be cognizant of getting it harvested timely so that you don't have a lot of field loss. So when we're talking about that, I mentioned that the corn plant generally decreases the amount of BT it's producing as it grows. And so I want to talk again today a little bit about growth stage for your corn. And as the corn gets larger, it's generally difficult to find the cotyledon and the first true leaf. And so I took a stalk here and I split it in half, and I've peeled back all of the leaves up to the last most expressed leaf collar. And that's the way that we're going to be able to stage this corn. And so if you see here on the camera, the first 3 nodes of the corn plant, V1, V2, and V3, are all stacked together, followed by a slight white area. And then you have this dark spot that's V4, come up here to V5. And then that last leaf sheath comes down here and is attached to this node. And so that's V6. And as that corn plant keeps growing, you'll keep seeing this alternating dark spot for the node, light spot for the inner node, dark spot for the node, light spot for the inner node, another dark spot there for the node. And that's how you can stage the corn from here on out. Just split the stalk. Remember, these 3 that are stacked together are 1, 2, and 3. The 4th one slightly elevated from that. So between V7 and V10, that corn's going to kind of go into rapid growth, and likely that BT will decrease in the root system, and it'll become more susceptible to corn rootworm. If you have a problem with trait failure, you'll generally have an entire node of roots that are clipped back and killed off. And at that point, you definitely need to let us know so that we can come out and have the agronomist take a look at your field and help you with recommendations on mitigating the risk of goosenecking and harvest loss and things like that. Lorsban through the pivot is about the only rescue treatment that's left for corn rootworm. Other ways to manage corn rootworm for future crops are crop rotation. The beetles in our neck of the woods, at least, only live and lay their eggs and overwinter in cornfields and then damage the next year's corn. So if you rotate to a different crop, you generally can break that life cycle. And then corn rootworm treatments other than BT. So there's some different insecticides that can be used. Capture can be used in furrow at planting, or you could use something like Steward over the top of your corn when it starts silking and tasseling. And generally that treatment happens about 10 days after tassel, when the females become gravid and start laying eggs. At that point, we know that most of those rootworm beetles have migrated up out of the ground and are susceptible to the spray. Two other things to greatly impact 2021's corn crop. The first one that I want to talk about is your 2020 wheat harvest. Two things that we need to be cognizant of during wheat harvest. The first one is always residue management. Make sure that you have your combine set to spread the residue out the back end as evenly as possible. A lot of cornfields over the years, you could kind of see this wavy effect of tall corn and short corn. And generally the short corn is found right behind where the combine ran, where there's a larger amount of residue that's keeping that soil cooler in the spring and causing that growth to be slower after you plant your corn. The other thing that we want to make sure we do is, if we do catch a rain during harvest, we hold ourselves out of the field long enough to allow that soil to dry. Cleat marks in wheat harvest generally turn into bricks that we're trying to plant through in the next spring, especially if we have a fairly dry winter where we don't get a lot of soil tilth built out of that freeze and thaw cycle. So we want to, in the next 3 weeks, pay attention to the corn rootworm hatch and how it's affecting the roots on our corn. We want to pay attention to our residue management and hold ourselves out of the field just a little longer in that wheat harvest if we can, or find another field that didn't get as much rain if we do have a rain there during wheat harvest. And the third thing, probably the most important thing that could impact your 2021 corn crop, is whether you're here or not. So remember, everyone's out there busy irrigating, working summer fallow, spraying, and harvesting wheat. And it's important that you slow down, you take a second look at those corners, and make sure we're all here to make it to next year's corn planting. That's all for today. I'm Matt Long, helping you farm differently, providing information you can't get anywhere else.